his heart. Fanny shivered a little. She shut the furnace door and went upstairs again. "Smells like something burning. Cloth or something," called Annie from the kitchen. "It's only an old apron that was cluttering up my bureau drawer." Thus she successfully demonstrated the first lesson in the cruel and rigid course of mental training she had mapped out for herself. Leaving Winnebago was not easy. There is something about a small town that holds you. Your life is so intimately interwoven with that of your neighbor. Existence is so safe, so sane, so sure. Fanny knew that when she turned the corner of Elm Street every third person she met would speak to her. Life was made up of minute details, too trivial for the notice of the hurrying city crowds. You knew when Millie Glasner changed the baby buggy for a go-kart. The youngest Hupp boy, Sammy, who was graduated from high school in June, is driving A.J. Dawes's automobile now. My goodness, how time flies! Doppler's grocery has put in plate glass windows, and they're getting out-of-season vegetables every day now from Milwaukee. As you pass you get the coral glow of tomatoes, and the tender green of lettuces. And that vivid green? Fresh young peas. And in February, well! They've torn down the old yellow brick National Bank, and in its place a chaste Greek temple of a building looks rather contemptuously down its classic columns upon the farmers' wagons drawn up along the curb. If Fanny Brandeis's sense of proportion had not been out of plumb, she might have realized that, to Winnebago, the new First National Bank building was as significant and epochal as had been the Woolworth building to New York. The very intimacy of these details, Fanny argued, was another reason for leaving Winnebago. They were like detaining fingers that grasped at your skirts, impeding your progress. She had early set about pulling every wire within her reach that might lead, directly or indirectly, to the furtherance of her ambition. She got 2 offers from Milwaukee retail stores. She did not consider them for a moment. Even a Chicago department store of the second grade, one of those on the wrong side of State Street, did not tempt her. She knew her value. She could afford to wait. There was money enough on which to live comfortably until the right chance presented itself. She knew every item of her equipment, and she conned them to herself greedily. Despite charm of manner, the thing that is called magnetism, brains, imagination, driving force, health, youth, and most precious of all, that which money could not buy, nor education provide, experience. Experience, a priceless weapon, that is beaten into shape only by much contact with men and women, and that is sharpened by much rubbing against the rough edges of this world. In April her chance came to her. Came in that accidental, haphazard way that momentous happenings have. She met on Elm Street a traveling man from whom Molly Brandeis had bought for years. He dropped both sample cases and shook hands with Fanny, eyeing her expertly and approvingly, and yet without insolence. He was a wise, road-weary, skillful member of his fraternity, growing gray in years of service, and a little bitter. Though perhaps that was due partly to traveling man's dyspepsia, brought on by years of small-town hotel food. "So you've sold out." "Yes, over a month ago." That was a nice little business you had there. Your ma built it up herself." There was a woman. Gosh. Discounted her bills even during the panic. Fanny smiled a reflective little smile. That line is a complete characterization of my mother. Her life was a series of panics. But she never lost her head, and she always discounted. He held out his hand. "Well, glad I met you." He picked up his sample cases. "You leaving Winnebago?" "Yes." "Going to the city, I suppose. Well, you're a smart girl. And your mother's daughter. I guess you'll get along all right. What house are you going with?" "I don't know. I'm waiting for the right chance. It's all in starting right. I'm not going to hurry." He put down his cases again, and his eyes grew keen and kindly. He gesticulated with one broad forefinger. "Listen, m' girl. I'm what they call an old timer. They want these high-power, 8-cylinder kids on the road these days, and it's all we can do to keep up. But I've got something they haven't got, yet. I never read anybody on the psychology of business, but I know human nature all the way from Elm Street, Winnebago, to Fifth Avenue, New York." "I'm sure you do," said Fanny politely, and took a step forward as though to end the conversation. "Now wait a minute. They say the way to learn is to make mistakes. If that's true, I'm at the head of the class. I've made 'em all. Now get this. You start out and specialize. Specialize. Tie to one thing and make yourself an expert in it. But first, be sure it's the right thing." "But how is one to be sure?" "By squinting up your eyes so you can see 10 years ahead. If it looks good to you at that distance, better, in fact, than it does close by, then it's right. I suppose that's what they call having imagination. I never had any. That's why I'm still selling goods on the road. To look at you, I'd say you had too much. Maybe I'm wrong. But I never yet saw a woman with a mouth like yours who was cut out for business, unless it was your mother, and her eyes were different. Let's see, what was I saying?" "Specialize." "Oh, yes. And that reminds me. Bunch of fellows in the smoker last night talking about Haynes Cooper. Your mother hated 'em like poison, the way every small town merchant hates the mail order houses. But I hear they've got an infants' wear department that's just going to grass for a lack of a proper head. You're only a kid, and they've done you dirt all these years, of course. But if you could sort of horn in there, why, say, there's no limit to the distance you could go. No limit! With your brains and experience." That had been the beginning. From then on the thing had moved forward with a certain inevitableness. There was something about the vastness of the thing that appealed to Fanny. Here was an organization whose great arms embraced the world. Haynes Cooper, giant among mail order houses, was said to eat a small town merchant every morning for breakfast. "There's a Haynes Cooper catalog in every farmer's kitchen," Molly Brandeis used to say. "The Bible's in the parlor, but they keep the H.C. book in the room where they live." That she was about to affiliate herself with this house appealed to Fanny Brandeis's sense of comedy. She had heard her mother presenting her arguments to the stubborn farmer folk who insisted on ordering their stove, or dinner set, or plow, or kitchen goods from the fascinating catalog. "I honestly think it's just the craving for excitement that makes them do it," she often said. "They want the thrill they get when they receive a box from Chicago, and open it, and take off the wrappings, and dig out the thing they ordered from a picture, and not knowing whether it will be right or wrong." Her arguments usually left the farmer unmoved. He would drive into town, mail his painfully written letter, and order at the post office, dispose of his load of apples, or butter, or cheese, or vegetables, and drive cheerfully back again, his empty wagon bumping and rattling down the old corduroy road. Express, breakage, risk, loyalty to his own region, all these arguments left him cold. In May, after much manipulation, correspondence, 2 interviews, came a definite offer from the Haynes Cooper Company. It was much less than the State Street store had offered, and there was something tentative about the whole agreement. Haynes Cooper proffered little and demanded much, as is the way of the rich and mighty. But Fanny remembered the 10-year viewpoint that the weary wise old traveling man had spoken about. She took their offer. She was to go to Chicago almost at once, to begin work June 1st. End of Part 1 of Chapter 8.